A lone hiker and seasonal medical worker is walking through his favorite part of Yellowstone National Park when a female grizzly spots him. She is looking for food to feed her two young cubs and considers the man to be potential prey. Hit that like button and subscribe right now. This is the terrifying grizzly bear attack on Lance Crosby. Welcome to Final Affliction. Lance Crosby had worked and lived in Yellowstone National Park for 5 seasons. His job was with MedCorps, which is a company that operates 3 emergency care clinics in the park. They provide medical assistance to visitors and staff within the park. The facilities include the ability to provide stabilization of major trauma or other life-threatening injuries prior to being diverted to advanced care facilities elsewhere. Working in such an environment was exciting, and you never knew what you'd be dealing with each day. Lance had worked as a seasonal employee at the Lake Medical Clinic during the summer months. As well as being medically trained, he had a keen interest in bears, and during his downtime at work, he enjoyed hiking and exploring the wilderness Yellowstone had on offer. On August 7, 2015, Lance headed out to his favorite spot, Elephant Back Mountain Trail. Located near Lake Village, the trek can take between 2 and 3 hours and loops through dense lodgepole forest. As it climbs to a peak, it offers spectacular views of Yellowstone Lake, something 63-year-old Lance always enjoyed. But on that fateful day, Lance broke some of the park's cardinal rules. He was hiking alone, and he didn't carry any bear spray with him. On top of that, he wasn't carrying a mobile phone in case of emergencies. He had often stated that he preferred not to carry bear spray as a deterrent because it would make him complacent. Instead, he always remained vigilant, relying on his senses and knowledge of the area to protect himself against surprise bear encounters. Unfortunately, this tactic didn't work for him, and it is uncertain whether carrying bear spray during his final hike would have helped anyway, because his encounter turned out to be a rare and unusual attack. As he walked up the winding path, a pair of eyes were trained on him. It was a female grizzly with her 2 yearling cubs. She was on the hunt and considered the lone hiker to be prey. Lance was unaware that he was being stalked. Hidden behind the tree trunks, the sow moved closer to the trail. Then decided to cut through the trees. Lance stepped off the path and climbed uphill, further from the well-marked route. The female grizzly walked purposefully across the ground, gaining on him. When Lance paused to take a breath, he looked behind him, but the grizzly and her cubs were concealed by the undergrowth. They didn't make a sound. When he continued upwards, she followed silently behind him. Her footsteps didn't make a rustle on the ground. Her cubs trotted dutifully a few paces behind her. When Lance was just a third of a mile from the hiking trail, the grizzly had managed to stalk to within yards of him. She was still unnoticed, still undetected by the seasoned hiker. Suddenly, she lunged forwards and leapt onto Lance from behind. It was a classic predatory attack. Lance was floored immediately. The sow weighed 259 pounds, 117 kilograms. Her weight alone was enough to subdue Lance, but he tried to fight back. He could hear the guttural growling of the grizzly on top of him. He tried to push her away, but she swiped him with her large paws, her long claws slashing his forearms. Then came the fatal delivery. Within seconds, she clamped her jaws around the back of his neck and crushed his spinal column. The bear lifted him up off his feet and shook him violently, causing catastrophic damage. Lance felt the pressure building from the powerful bite before his spine gave way, and he was killed instantly, still hanging from her mouth. Severing the spinal cord, the bear rapidly disposed of its prey, and the struggle was over. She tucked into his body, devouring meat and calling her cubs over to join in. Lance hadn't been prepared for a predatory attack, but there is very little one can do when they are stalked and hunted by an adult grizzly bear. He hadn't seen her coming. He was unaware of the bear's presence until it had been too late. After feasting on Lance's body, the bear tried to cache his remains. She scooped up the surrounding vegetation, concealing it, with the intent on returning another day to eat. Her cubs had witnessed the attack on the man, and because the cubs learned behavior from their mother, they also now posed a threat to the general public. When Lance didn't show up for work the following morning, his colleagues raised the alarm. They informed the park rangers of his favorite hiking spot, and they went to investigate. With the Elephant Back Mountain Trail being a popular route for visitors to the park, it was surprising he hadn't been found earlier, but he had strayed off the beaten track. One of the rangers found his body, and the park's investigative team and local forensics were called in. From the evidence at the kill site, it appeared that the attack was rapid. There was no long, drawn-out struggle. The bear had not dragged his body through the woodland. Instead, she had delivered the fatal bite and eaten part of him then and there. Evidence showed that the cubs had also fed on him. His ball cap was found just 3 feet from his feet. There were no blood spatter marks, no blood trail, and no clothing fragments or personal possessions found outside of the body burial cache. This suggested that Lance was killed where his body lay. Defensive marks on his arms suggested that he fought back, but his cause of death was blunt force trauma. The coroner reported fractured bones in his back, which revealed that the grizzly grabbed him and shook him violently, causing brainstem disruption and immediate cessation of cardiac activity. Paw prints led investigators to the female grizzly responsible for the attack. She and her 2 cubs were standing nearby. The decision was made to euthanize her. The incident had not been a defensive one. Sometimes bears will attack people if they feel threatened or they believe their cubs are in danger. But this attack was clearly a predatory one and meant that the bear viewed people as food. This was a very dangerous situation, and rangers couldn't ensure public safety whilst she remained in the park. A necropsy was performed on the bear. Bite marks on Lance's body matched her mouth and teeth. DNA analysis of her fur also matched some found in close proximity to the kill site. She was in reasonable health with average body fat reserves on her. She was not starving or desperate for food. As for her cubs, the rangers couldn't allow them to remain in the park. Not only were they too young to fend for themselves, weighing just 50 pounds, 20 kilograms, but they would likely have learnt their mother's predatory behavior. Instead, park officials decided to move them to Toledo Zoo. Being as young as they were more likely to adapt to a life in captivity than older bears. Rangers took into consideration the nature of the attack and the condition of the bears when they decided the fate of the family. They tried to balance the protection of the wildlife with that of human visitors. A survey conducted on 7,770 day hikers to Yellowstone revealed that 60% of hiking groups were smaller than the recommended number of at least 3. It also found that fewer than 14% carried bear spray. These are just 2 basic precautions that are recommended by park officials, and yet most people don't adhere to them. The previous year, in 2014, there were estimated to be between 674 and 839 bears in the greater Yellowstone ecosystem. Since the national park was established in 1872, there have been 8 fatalities by bears. Far more people have died from drowning at the park, a total of 125, and 23 from burns after falling into the hot springs. On average, 3 million people visit Yellowstone every year. Despite this, the chances of being injured by a grizzly bear are approximately 1 in 2.7 million visits and are similar odds to being struck by a falling tree. Still, if precautions are taken and an awareness of the dangers is known beforehand, then a visit to Yellowstone National Park is likely to be an enjoyable one that doesn't lead to your terrifying final affliction.